Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've got a very special guest with me, Stefano. He's with EcomPartner. Stefano started off as an entrepreneur himself. He gained success and he found his calling in helping other entrepreneurs. For anyone new here, my name is Hiba Weber. Our stories are sort of similar. I also started off as an Amazon seller. We exited our business in 2019. It was a very successful exit. And in doing so, we had learned things from our own business that really helped us launch Seller Mobile. Seller Mobile is a software for Amazon sellers. We help you find gaps in your profitability, optimize your inventory management, and then automate certain aspects of your business like pricing and review management. Stefano, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd love to kind of have you introduce yourself and tell us about the most common pitfalls when it comes to Amazon businesses that are expanding into the European marketplaces.
Sure. Well, first of all, hi, Hiba. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and hopefully we can give some value to your audience.
Well, thank you.
So I'm Stefano. I'm the founder and director of EcomPartner. What we do is help brands expand into Europe just on Amazon. That's our focus. I started as a seller in 2016, and as you correctly said, I mean, we have a similar story, right? We both started as a seller. I guess I went the agency route. You went the tool developer route. Anyhow, so yeah, I'm Italian, living in Spain. And so what we do is just help sellers in the European marketplaces, since we know them very well. The team is native. And to answer your question about common mistakes, I would say, first of all, not having a plan. If you come to Europe, you have to know that there are 5 big countries where Amazon has a marketplace. So you have to have a strategy in terms of catalog selection, which products in which country you're going to sell, and in terms of a logistics strategy, right? Where am I going to store? Because if you are not careful, you're going to trigger VAT issues, right? Because in Europe, there's a law that says that if you store in one country, then you have to register for VAT there. So at the start, it makes sense not to register in each country where you sell. And for that, you have to have a plan and decide, okay, I'm going to store, let's say, in Germany. And from Germany, I'm going to ship to the other countries, Spain, France, Italy. So that's, I would say, the main mistake that brands make, and it helps to have somebody that understands the differences and can suggest which route to go. Of course, they will need a 3PL as well, so it's important to understand exactly where to get the 3PL. Also for returns, because often what Amazon does is put units as new, although they've been open, then they have issues with bad reviews. I mean, you know how it works, right? So it's really, I mean, delicate at the beginning to have the right strategy in place. And second mistake, I would say content. Not many sellers have the best content translated in each language, in each country where they sell. Amazon now gives you the opportunity to translate that content, the image, the content on the images, the content, the A+ content, the store. So I see many stores, let's say in English, in France or in Germany, you know, or the pictures aren't translated. So number 2 is content. Number 3, I would say, have a long-term like understanding of where your brand is gonna go in Europe. You know, understand that there are differences between marketplaces. Understand that competition level is different, and making sure that you're monitoring what's going on, all the KPIs, because suddenly you can have new competitors coming in Spain that you don't have in France, or vice versa. You know, so you have to really make sure that you're monitoring if you're selling in the big 5 countries, all those countries separately, right? And have a separate strategy for each of them, pretty much.
Awesome. So, I want to kind of go back to that first thing you said about having a plan. And I truly believe that you learn the most when you make a mistake. And so
That's true, yeah.
it's the best way to learn. And so I'll use my own example too about how important it is to have a plan. And then I have a question for you. So back when we had our, party supply toys novelty business brands, we were doing really well in the US. And of course, natural thought was, okay, well, let's expand to other marketplaces. Things are going really well here. And so we started with the UK, but we didn't really have a plan. Like we hadn't really sat down and said, okay, we want to do this, this, and this. And we said, let's just start it, see what happens. And that was a very expensive, like $50,000 to $75,000 mistake that we made that, really it didn't go well because we hadn't thought about how complicated it is actually to go into EU because of the VATs and because of all the different logistics and things that we had to account for. So my question for you is, when you're expanding to a different marketplace, would you recommend, is there like one country you want to start with that's like ideal and then go from there? What is the ideal approach there?
Well, Hiba, that's a great question. And I got asked that often. And the answer to that question is UK, just because the content is in the same language. So you don't have to do extra effort and extra investment to translate the content. So usually for US sellers, the best country to expand into in the European continent, because as you may know, the UK is not in the European Union anymore, is England. And then you have Germany, that actually is bigger in terms of volume than the UK. But of course, you have to translate all the content, right? So that's an investment that needs to be made. So those are the big two that you should be in.
Got it. And then, of course, buying trends are very different. What the things that Americans purchase are probably very different than the things that Germans purchase. And I know that personally, my husband's German, and his buying patterns are very different than, what people consume in the US. So tell us a little bit more about the product, like the product catalog that does well in certain countries in Europe as opposed to America.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right, Hiba. Well, first of all, there are geographical differences. That means that garden products will sell better in Italy and in Spain, although Germans do like their gardens. But still, the weather is colder there, right? So you have to consider that. Beach products, of course, you want to sell them first in Italy and Spain. So yeah, each category has its own difference. One category that does well across all countries is kitchen, homemade kitchen, but that's, I guess, it's the same in the US. I mean, traditionally, homemade kitchen is one of the best categories to sell on Amazon. And then, of course, you have supplements. Germany is very competitive for supplements. Italy and Spain is much less competitive. Beauty, still, I mean, there are still opportunities even in Germany. I see many sellers that maybe they have A+, but they don't have the store, or vice versa. Maybe they have the store and A+, but they don't have a great PPC strategy. Maybe they have a so-so PPC strategy, but they are not running display ads, right? So I see potential in many categories for a seller that knows what he's doing to really become the best seller, pretty much.
Got it. So it sounds like so far, just to recap, kind of strategy is probably paramount. That's the most important thing, right? Without a really good strategy, you're sort of, an untethered balloon. The next is the language, right? So the content, not only, the written content, but also images really need to translate into the different countries' culturally. And then product selection. That seems to be a core piece of like, just because it sells well in the US does not mean that that will translate to Italy or France or Germany or other countries in the EU or Europe. What else? Is there another piece that's sort of like really important that you've seen people not do right until they come to you and you help them fix that piece?
Compliance.
Okay.
That means that some product, EU is very strict and people complain all the time. I mean, in Italy especially, we complain because they want you to like to produce exactly everything as they say, you know, even food. For us Italians, of course, that's bad. They say, okay, pizza has to be 25 centimeters. If it's longer, it's not a pizza, you know, so they want to regulate everything. So sometimes they come into Europe and then they realize they cannot sell that particular product for whatever reason. Okay, it's not that common, but it happens, you know, so you're able to help with that, understanding if there are limitations or not. And other times it's just Amazon doesn't let you. Usually regulations within Amazon is similar in the States and in Europe, although they have to adapt themselves to the local regulations. So the opposite is also true, you know. So compliance, big. Yeah, plugs and especially electrical equipment, you have to have a lot of certifications. That's super important because you don't want to like order 1,000 units from China and then you realize that actually you cannot sell them, right?
Sure. Would you say that sellers need to have a certain revenue or order threshold before they should even consider moving into one of the European marketplaces, especially if you're starting off in the US marketplace?
Well, there are two considerations to be made. Revenues in the previous year and month by month growth, right? So you have to kind of evaluate those two factors. Usually we say at least 1 million revenues if you want to expand, but if you're making less and you're growing month by month by 20% and you have investment, then great, you know, and you have a plan, you know what you're doing, you have studied the market, you know, there's volume there, you have done a keyword research, you have seen that competition is not doing a great job, and you know for a fact that you can go there and make an impact, you know, so there's definitely room for expansion despite not having reached, let's say, 1 million in revenues. But consider that there are some fixed costs in terms of compliance, as I said, and you will have to monitor shipment from wherever you're sourcing, not just coming to the US, but in Europe as well. So it's an extra layer of complexity, right? Yeah.
Got it. So it almost sounds like if you are doing at least $1 million in revenue a year, or you have very significant, 20% month over month growth within your catalog in the US, within Amazon, then expanding to the European marketplaces is sort of common sense. I know that you guys focus on Amazon, but what is your argument on, if I had obviously limited resources in terms of expansion,
yeah,
should I look into expanding? And I know it might be biased, but hopefully you give me your honest opinion. Should I look into expanding into European marketplaces, or should I look into expanding to other marketplaces? So within the US, so Walmart.
Oh, I see.
What would you, like, if I had to pick? Or is it sort of like, I would try this before this? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, look, I always say a high number, not to scare people, but just so they understand that, yeah, it takes some investment. Although I've seen brands successfully expand into Europe, making 300K per year in the US, right? So, but you always have to give a higher number. To answer your question, I would say Amazon. It's easier on Amazon because you already know how it works. So I mean, what makes your product successful in the US is going to make your product successful in Europe. It's just different language, a different environment, right? But at least to launch in the UK is a no-brainer. right? Then, of course, if you want to go to Germany, then as we said, you have to translate all the listings, and that maybe takes more investment. Maybe we can differentiate. If you want to just try the UK, so that threshold is definitely lower. Usually say 1 million to those that want to launch in all the European countries, right? But if you want to just test the UK, I mean, it's just a matter of sending some boxes from your supplier to the FBA warehouses. At that point, you don't need a 3PL yet. So it's just a matter of testing the waters in the UK, right? So maybe we have to separate the two cases, right? And Walmart in the US, of course, I mean, I've seen that Walmart is growing a lot, and now they're making it easier for sellers to sell there. So that's definitely, I mean, I would be lying if I said that that's not a good opportunity, although I'm not an expert in that, since Walmart is not in Europe, so I'm not an expert in that.
Sure. So it almost sounds to me like there's lots of opportunities, and talking to someone like you and getting on a discovery call with you or your team to help kind of understand what exactly they're doing and what their goals are. I'm sure one of the first questions you ask is, what is your goal? What do you want to do? And based on the goal, you sit down with their team and develop a strategy. Is that sort of how this works?
Yeah, I mean, we understand, first of all, of course, we do a discovery call to understand better, as you said, the goals that they have, what they've been doing in the US. And then we do a market study. We analyze the catalog, the competition in each country in Europe, right? And then we're able to suggest, the costs. Okay, what are your costs, right? Do you need to launch? Do you want to launch, or do you need to launch? Or we suggest to launch just in the UK, or maybe we could try Germany as well, just because we see there is a big opportunity there, right? So we give you a perspective, right? Sometimes it's Italy, it's not Germany, right? So we give you the perspective. Okay, we do UK and Spain, or UK and France, so we really help you picking the best countries for you, and the catalog selection, as we said. And then it's a matter, of course, to just launch those products, right? I mean, the good thing about Amazon is that you can use the reviews you already have in the States. So that's a great point to remember. So that means that it's definitely easier to launch and rank. And so we take you by the hand and really help you expand into Europe, or if you're already selling, improve upon what you're doing. That means growing other countries, and of course we manage PPC campaigns as well, so making sure that you're profitable. That's another important thing, right? Because they are seeing the profit margins being cut by this energy crisis and the recession in general, right?
Absolutely. So you've got 5 years of experience helping Amazon sellers. You've probably learned from your own mistakes and mistakes other sellers have made before they came to you. So what is the best way to get in touch with you? And do you have any special offers for the listeners today?
Sure, you can reach me at my email, Stefano at EcomPartner.global, and I guess you will put that in the show notes, I guess. And that's our website as well, EcomPartner.global. I have a podcast as well. You can find more info on the website. We produce content. Our offer is free audit or market study in the case you're not selling yet in Europe. That means that we'll do that discovery call and that market study and research, or audit, as I said, if you're already selling in Europe, for free, just for your audience.
That's a great deal. Thank you so much, Stefano. This was great information. I always find that not only are you learning from your own mistakes, but you got to learn from other people's mistakes. And so if there are things that you've seen, you can help Amazon sellers who are trying to go into this, avoid those pitfalls. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Hiba. Thank you again. A pleasure to be